Hi everyone, this is Julie Bruns. Welcome to the Peace and Possibilities podcast. I want you to thrive and be happy, peaceful, and content, no matter where you are on your journey. This podcast shares stories that will show you how it can be done, no matter what your circumstances. You'll be inspired and come away with a new spark of an idea. Never forget, anything is possible. New episodes are released every Wednesday. Subscribe, rate us, and leave us a review. This helps others find our content and get happier sooner. To possibility and beyond. Welcome, everyone. My guest today is Justine Fedak, and Justine and I met. I don't know if you remember meeting me, Justine, but we met. It was September of 2016, and we were at a conference called MAD. Making a difference. Was it what MADD? What did it stand for? Making a difference. Now I'm trying to remember.
I don't remember.
Something with making a difference.
It always goes by MAD.
What is
it's
it?
Rare. I was going to say it's just rare that the whole thing is spelled out.
Okay. I'm trying to remember what the acronym is. Anyways, that conference for me was life-changing. And that actually, the last day of that conference was, and I write about this story in my new book that's coming out in a couple of months, the last day, that cool exercise where she had everyone go around and give everyone your idea, that 15 minutes, like talk to a different person every minute. It was such a cool exercise I've never done before. I'm like, what a cool idea just to meet someone brand new and say, here's what I'm thinking, and then see what they have, the feedback they have for you. So for me in that moment, I had nothing that I had an idea about. Like I wasn't trying to start any mission or program or anything. And then at the last minute, I just walked up to James. You remember the speaker we had, James, at that conference? Mm-hmm. And his story was so moving to me. And I just walked right up to him and I said, he's like, what do you need help with? And I said, nothing. I want to help you. I said, I want you to speak at colleges and high schools all over the country, in the world. I said, your story is unbelievable. I said, more young men need to hear it. And it's so inspiring. And I'm going to put you in contact with some people that I think can help, whatever. And he was just like, well, what can I do for you? And I'm like, nothing. And I was like, huh. And then in that moment, like I just had this idea, and I can tell you more about it another time. But anyways, it was just funny because all week during the conference, I was thinking about, what do I want? Do I want to create something? Like, what's my problem? What solution? Like, I was just like, I don't know. I just want a little bit more. I'm not sure of what. And then, literally the last 15 minutes of the conference is when it came to me. It was fun. But I remember hearing you speak, and you were in one of the circles I joined, a breakout session, I think. And I just remember hearing your story and thinking it was a really cool story, and you were inspiring as well. And I just liked meeting you and hearing your story. And I remember seeing you throughout the conference, and I talked to you, I think, a few other times there. So I thought it would be fun to talk to you and see a little bit more about how you got to be where you are today. So tell everyone what you do, and tell everyone like where you ended up now, but like how you started with the career that you have.
Okay. So it's an interesting thing because I no longer do what I did. And it is a funny, like even hearing you ask me the question, and thank you for remembering me. That's so nice. And I'm right back in that room now.
Yeah.
Like by the river, as you're saying all this, all that's flooding back for me. So what do I do now? So what did I do? What did I build a career in is marketing communications. Not really by design. I often have referred to myself as an accidental expert. And there was a period of time where Splash was an insert in the Chicago Sun-Times. And I had a little column called The Accidental Expert, where I just wrote little things about things that had happened to me in my life. And I sort of have this philosophy that in life, you do things, and in some ways you become an expert, but more by accident often than by design. So not always. Some people are very purposeful in what they're doing, and they know almost when they're 5, right? They're just like, I always knew I would, or I could always build things, and so therefore I started building, or I could always bake. So I think there are people that really know what they're doing. I was not one that stayed down the path I was going, more because of life circumstances that dealt me some weird cards. So I thought I would go to law school. My dad was an attorney. And I had a boyfriend that we dated a really long time. And then We were planning to get married, and he passed away in a car accident 3 weeks after my 21st birthday. And I basically, at that point, stopped. Maybe the best way to describe it is I stopped dreaming, right? I stopped having, blue sky, sunshiny kind of ideas about, oh, what can I do? But I was lucky enough to have people around me that wanted to kind of keep me in the upright position. And so I landed a job at BMO Harris, but I was on the BMO side at that time in Canada. And I ended up in the public relations department by accident as an admin assistant, answering a media line, not with any, delusions of grandeur or thoughts that I would build any kind of career. Okay. More just going in, and I think I found that the work became a passion for me, and probably because I wasn't really sure where to put my passion, but inherently I was a passionate person. Okay. But I was broken, right? I was broken by the circumstances. And I think a lot of times people in life feel overwhelmed by their circumstances, and therefore they don't participate. But I think I participated. So maybe what saved me and allowed me to build that accidental career was that I threw myself into it simply because I was in it. And then I kind of fell in love with it.
That's really good. That's really good advice, because it's like this. Sometimes, like you said, people get lost or stop dreaming, or they don't really know what they want. Lots of times people don't know what they want, but if you can like throw yourself into the thing you're doing. I talked about this with someone a couple weeks ago on my podcast, but like, just do the best you can at whatever job you're in or whatever role you have, and like learn about it, be passionate about it, just be a good like worker about it. It doesn't have to be something you want to like live your life doing, but if you can do that, you're like, you start to open up more doors, and then you learn a little bit more, and then people start noticing that you're being that way. And then all of a sudden something you thought that was just like, it's like, oh, wait a minute, I am good at it. Or people start to notice that. And so it doesn't have to be always this like light bulb, like I'm meant to do this and now I'm just going to go surge on. It's not usually that clear for people. So I like that that was your journey instead.
Yeah, I think as I fast forward, almost 30 years later, I reflect back and think of all the amazing experiences I had with that kind of philosophy. And then I became kind of intoxicated by, oh, I can get bigger roles and I can do more. And I want to be able to impact this, and I want to lead this initiative, or I want to be part of this. And all of that led me to a transfer to Chicago in the late 90s. I've since then became an American citizen. Chicago is my home. I see myself and feel I'm a Chicagoan. So all of those things wouldn't have happened had I not committed myself to that opportunity. And I do think that a lot of people feel that you need some sort of roadmap. Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, it's good to have a general sense of where you're going. And I know right now for people in this super weird time of the world that we're living in, a lot of people are questioning, am I doing the thing I love? What is it I love? Like almost the philosophical, who am I? So I think throughout my career, if I were to go back and do it again, what would I do differently? I would probably just not lose myself so much in my corporation. So I think there was a period of time where I very much was trying to understand, who am I in the context of what I can contribute? And are my contributions really valued in so much as whatever validation I needed back? And I say this for people listening that are in a company kind of role or work with a group, that sometimes the validation we need, we're looking for it from a quote unquote corporation or company or firm. But really, that's your internal work. That's you determining, am I enjoying doing this? Do I want to be doing this? Am I passionate about this? And am I doing the best I can? And if that's all of that, and sometimes things don't happen exactly the way you want, you still know that you're doing you. You're doing the things that you want to do. And I was very lucky to be able to do a lot of super cool things in my career and build a big, sports sponsorship portfolio for BMO, help integrate a lot of big M&A deals, make a ton of friends. build a big opportunity and platform with BMO in Chicago and outside Chicago, but for community services, community activation, for building a network of people that created opportunity, whether that was philanthropic or for business. But those were things that I think, as I reflect back, those were things that really mattered to me, was being part of something that I could see things being built and contributing to that and helping people build what they needed to build, whether it's their own career or an initiative or program or,
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah. I love what you said about looking for validation through, because I was the same way along my career, like managers, like, getting the next promotion, getting, this role, getting a performance review that was, XYZ, whatever. Everyone's, you're taught to aspire to those things. And I did a lot of that instead of just listening to like, well, do I even want that? Like, I remember asking myself, I want to be promoted so I can be a manager. And like one day I just was like, I don't want to manage people. Like, I love the work I'm doing. I don't want to manage people. I want to do the work. And I knew that if I became a manager and I had to manage people, the work would kind of go aside, and then the people managing would be stressful, and you don't usually get paid what you need to get paid to do that well. And then I was like, wait, I do like developing people, but I don't want to like be their direct boss. And then it was kind of like, that's what led me into leadership development. But I think it's such an important thing. I love that you said that, because I'm going to teach, I have boys that are college age. Well, one just graduated college, but talking to them about like, I'm trying to get a raise and a promotion for what? Like, because you really love this job, because you want to make more money, because you want to do a different role in this realm. Eventually, like, figure out what it is, because you said if you can figure out, if you do you, which is, a new popular phrase, but if you do that well and you ask yourselves the right questions and you're not really going for that external feedback or validation, you're probably going to get there faster. Like, you think it's the other way, right? I think we're taught that it's like you get promoted and then you can get to this other thing more. You can keep growing up the ladder because you're doing all the right things, but that's not the fastest way. Usually,
No, and I do think that we don't have in a more corporate setting or in a company setting, we don't really have the moment or the time to pause and say, what's my purpose and how does it align to the company's purpose? Right. And I do think so. I mean, I left my executive role with BMO Harris. I still do consulting work for them. And I lived half my life there. So it's still like when it's like when you leave for college and like you go home to family. So I'm still, all my banking is still there and I'm still a big advocate. But I decided to leave because I had been there 27 years.
Wow.
And I'd always worked there in 2 countries and all kinds of jobs, and the best career that anyone could ask for, no question. But it was time to go. And I had started defining myself as a corporate hippie, even while I was there. And I decided that it was time for me to leave and just be a corporate hippie. And some people say, well, what is that?
Yeah.
And it's basically, take my understanding of the corporate world, but also take my more spiritual, philosophical way that I am and really merge those things together to share that in a different way. And a lot of things in my journey, including my MS diagnosis and a number of, different life things that we all have, our life things that we don't tend to integrate into the workplace for sure, or integrate into just our general way we are. I somehow, after 2012, when I had 2 massive MS attacks back to back and I was super sick, I lost mobility in my left side, had to walk with a cane, had to start disclosing. I mean, I could have said like, well, I have this cane because I have a hip problem or something like that, but I hadn't really had to disclose because it was non-visible. Yeah. But once you have a mobility device, people are sort of like, hey, how come you have this cane? What's going on? Mm-hmm. So I used to get, were you in a car accident? Did you fall off a horse? All these really interesting things that I was like, oh, do you need a cane for all those things? But I decided that instead of feeling vulnerable and uncomfortable because of it, and it happened to me, I was speaking at a conference and I could feel in this room, it was about 500 people, I felt like they were staring at my cane as I was standing there, and I was kind of starting to perspire because I was super uncomfortable, and I was presenting on brand strategy and activation. And that's something I know really well. And I started started to lose my way. So in that moment, it seemed like I should probably stop and regroup for myself, but there's 500 people sitting there. So basically, and I was in high heels. So I'm trying to balance in these high heels with my cane, can't feel my leg, like why I was doing that at the time. So I finally just said, okay. And I stopped and I said, all right, raise your hand if you're wondering why I have this cane. Go ahead. This is audience participation part. And of course, everyone looked horrified.
Because this just came to you in the middle of what you were talking about?
Totally, because I was losing my place. I was losing my confidence. And I was like, I don't even know what I'm doing up here. And I wanted to leave.
Yeah.
Like in the middle of standing there, I wanted to get off the stage. So I was like, you need to regroup. So I basically said, raise your hand if you are wondering why I have this cane. And nobody wanted to raise their hand. And then eventually a couple guys in the front raised their hand. Then everybody's hand went up. And I said, I have multiple sclerosis. This is what multiple sclerosis is. I don't really feel my left leg. It's quite painful. And I'm going to take off my shoes and I'm going to stand in bare feet because I can feel the stage and the floor better. I'm going to put down my cane. I'm going to lean here and I'm going to deliver to you what you came here to hear. And if anybody wants to talk about MS afterwards, I'm happy to talk to you after. And the next speaker came up after that in bare feet, sort of like in solidarity. Yeah. And that was totally transformational for me as a business person, because in that moment, I chose to be me, not some representation of some corporate expectation to deliver some kind of something to a bunch of people in a room that were all just people.
Yeah.
So that started me on this sort of, I'd say, corporate hippie journey. And, since that time, I've grown into just being me, doing what I do, being me. And so now I'm consulting. So my LLC is called Corporate Hippies.
Cool.
Marketing consulting. And I'm writing some books, actually.
Really?
So I'll hear about your book. Yeah. I wrote a kid's book that's being published, and I'm working on another book that's sort of more about my journey with MS and my life and corporate stuff, and also meditation, because I think I told you that I'm no longer walking with a cane. I have no signs of MS, and it's being studied now at UCSF and to some degree by my doctor at Northwestern, because there's no explanation for how I have absolutely no evidence of MS anymore after 20 years.
There's an explanation, right? It's just not medical.
Right. There's a lot of stuff I did through meditation that was very different than I had been doing before, that I feel created some kind of integration, and some different people that came into my life that I think really gave me that bigger opportunity to open myself up. And that's not something we talk about in our jobs, right? And I think we carry a heavy burden, and I did for many years, of trying to be all these things that I don't know why that we do that. To your point about talking to your kids, just being you and understanding you is a hard enough job.
Right.
So I think that that's the starting point for anything, is just being you.
What's the phrase? Just be you, everyone else is taken. Like you can't to emulate someone. There's always, you can emulate habits, and you can copy good behaviors and you can see what strengths other people have that are going to get you what you want. But at the end of the day, no one will have all of the experiences and the lessons and the wisdom and the insight and the ideas that one single person, no one can replicate that. So you might as well just be yourself. And like you said in that speech that day, you probably touched a lot more people, I'm sure you did, doing what you did, than if you had just talked about your brand strategy, ignored the fact that you were uncomfortable, and then left. People would have been like, oh, all right, she taught me some good things, but it would be more not forgettable, but like one of many, whatever. But there's probably people that didn't forget that because of what happened that day, and because you just stopped and you said, what? Like, and I love that you just, in the moment, you're like, you just be real, and people so appreciate that. And it was risky for you to do, but way less risky than you standing up there pretending everything was perfect and probably messing up because you were so uncomfortable and wanted to leave. So that's such a big lesson too for anyone at any age, right? Just to stop and say, like, I'm uncomfortable. I can't do this, or this feels crappy, or whatever it is. And everyone can relate to that. But it's risky because you're like, I'm in this corporate world and I'm here at this conference and doing this corporate thing. And what if that backfired on you? But I feel like even if it had backfired and it didn't work out well for you, it would have been something else good, even in that moment or at that conference. If it didn't, whatever you did didn't sit well with people, it would have brought you some other opportunity, right? I'm sure you know
Well,
that.
you know what? To me, I think the more vulnerable I've been, the stronger I am. And it's interesting because I obviously disclosed to people that I was diagnosed with MS, and I just received a message through LinkedIn from a young woman who basically said that had I not shared my professional, like integrated my professional life and talked about my career so openly on LinkedIn, that when she got her MS diagnosis, she thought that was it for her career. And she said that she wanted to send me this because I unknowingly helped her to pull it back together again. And it was a very overwhelming message to get, because I do the sharing because it also helps me to a certain degree. And I want to, even if it's a tiny, tiny thing in that moment that helps somebody just rethink how they're feeling in that moment, it's worth it. But to get those kinds of messages are so meaningful,
Mhm.
because we don't really realize how our vulnerability is truly a source of strength. And I one time had a guy say to me at it was a photo shoot, and I had my cane, and he said, "All right, give me your cane." And I said, "No, I mean, the cane needs to be in the picture." And he said, "Well, there's no need. I mean, we're not going to write all this stuff about MS." And I said, "Well, I've answered some of the questions in that way." And he said, "Well, you don't want to be known as the girl with MS." And I said, "But I am the girl with MS."
Yeah, why not?
And right. And he said, "Well, but then that label will be there." And I said, "Oh, well, I've been labeled a lot of things, so that one's probably the least offensive."
Yeah, it's not an offensive label. It's just something,
Right.
yeah, I live with.
But it's an interesting way that we think about things, because we think about, how will I be perceived and labeled? And at the end of the day, you are the determiner of how you are going to be perceived,
Right.
right? So my MS became a part of my story,
Yeah.
and it
And
still is, obviously.
yeah, you're not, I'd love to talk to you more about that too another time, about how it's basically gone. You determine, I also love what you just said about the labels. It's like someone else can label you, but you determine if those labels are real or not. Like, so the girl with MS, well, I am a girl with MS. And so it's not a dirty label. Like that guy was thinking it's going to be a negative thing, and people see that that's going to be your perception. But the people that I really want to touch and impact aren't going to look at it that way. And nor do I. And that's what's important to me. Like, not if someone's looking at it going, oh, she has MS and she wants, and they want to look the other way. Okay, whatever.
Hmm.
That's not your label. That's their label, you know?
Yeah, but I think that prevents people from exploring more about themselves and connecting differently to things, or taking different risks. So some of these things that might seem risky in some ways, if it matters to you, the greater risk is not to have tried it.
Mhm.
So I would rather have a no regrets policy. And now that I am not in a corporate executive role, there's things that I have never really done. Like, I was never a consultant, so I didn't know anything about that, or billing as a consultant, or any of these kinds of things. So it's been really interesting to experience that, and to learn to work on teams with other partners from companies or firms that I partner with on things. And I realize how different I am today than I was 12 months ago, 24 months ago. And I think that acknowledgement of that we're constantly changing. I mean, I listened to this actually really interesting little interview with Sharon Salzberg, who's a wonderful meditation teacher, and I just adore her. And there was a line that she said where she calls a part of herself, like the self critic, Lucy, after the Peanuts Lucy,
Oh yeah.
which I loved. And she said, and this is a line, I put it on my Instagram actually, that I absolutely loved, which is that, Lucy says to Charlie Brown, "Charlie Brown, the problem with you, Charlie Brown, is that you are you."
I remember that. I remember that.
Right? And it's so perfect, because the problem with me is, so I say to myself, the problem with you, Justine, is you are you. So the things that we do, we are our own biggest problem. And anything that I've had a hard time with truly was my own problem, that I either made much bigger, or that I didn't wrestle to the ground fast enough, and I let it haunt me for too long.
Yeah.
So that's what I work on now. I mean, I meditate every morning when I wake up, and I really work on throughout the day, trying to kind of like release those things.
I
So
love
I think
that.
that's helpful, right? For anybody with whatever you're dealing with.
I have a book about that, a chapter about that in my new book. It's called Mindfulness and Focus, but and not multitasking. Obviously, it's all connected to meditation. But I too started doing that. Actually, it's been about 3.5 years. So right after that conference, so that conference was in September of 2016. It was the spring of 2017 where I think I started doing it. And I was just doing an experiment, like I'm going to do it for 30 days, meditate and see if it changes. And so I can go report back on it. But I was like, when I'm done reporting on it, for this management class that I'm teaching these people about, I'll go back to doing what I was doing before. And I never stopped.
That's
That's
cool.
why I wrote a chapter about it, because like people, it works. It works. It has so many benefits. It changes your body and your mind. I'm sure you already know. And it's just so powerful. But so many years ago, I mean, when I was in college, it was not, no one even talked about it, number one. And even in the business world, like for maybe the last 5 years now, it's like, people, some of the corporations I worked at, there's a meditation room. There's people are encouraged to meditate. People are given instructions on this wellness and well-being and stuff, because it affects the kind of worker you are and all the good you do and all of that. But it wasn't talked about before. So I love that it's such a common subject now.
Mm.
And I love that people are just you can incorporate it into anything you do, and it can change so many things about you. But it had a little bit of a negative connotation, because it was like, oh, just sit there and just be quiet. And it's like, no, the more people learn about it and the more research is done, obviously, it's so much more than that. But
Mhm.
yeah, I'm a big proponent of it, and I never stop doing it now. It's just part of who I am. And then you notice the difference when you don't do it. And I've taught my kids about it, and hopefully they can incorporate some sort of routine about it. But I love that. I love that it's changing in the corporate world so much, and that
Mhm.
people are like you, like me, can just talk about it and not be judged or labeled for it, because it is, and the research is there. So anyone that comes back and says, oh, I don't know, it seems a little woo woo or fluffy or whatever, it's like, people, there's all these kinds of doctors and hospitals and all kinds of people are doing studies on what happens, like to people like you who start incorporating this and actually change their physicality, right, and their health and all of that. It's amazing.
And the crazy part is I knew how to meditate as a child, which is a whole other story. But I did it very sporadically. It wasn't incorporated as a practice. And
Yeah.
I think that's what I hear you saying, is that for you, it's you committed to it,
Yeah.
you saw the benefits, and it becomes like I have to actually work on not being panicked if I don't get in the amount of time that I want for meditation, right? Because I could be meditating for an hour and a half and it would be perfectly fine.
Yeah.
And people are like, well, how do you do it for that long? Like, you don't even know how long you're there. You're there. It's just, it's a, it's a way of, I sort of said, like, there's the you doing all the stuff and there's the you watching you do all the stuff.
Yeah.
So for that period of time, the you watching you gets the center stage and the you doing gets to take a break.
Yeah.
So you need that.
Yeah.
Once you've engaged in that way, it changes how you function. So I love that that's a chapter in your book. I'm all about people at least exploring a meditative practice, not necessarily full on that way, but even going for a walk,
Mm-hmm.
gardening, something that allows those two parts of you like to have a different moment, right? The doing part to just slow down a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so powerful. It's so cool. Okay, so we are coming up at like half an hour. So let's look at we talked about a lot of these already. I'm just going to go to the last question. So what advice would you have people that are, whether they're 30, 40, or 50, and they're trying to, number one, so which would you rather answer? How to find a meaningful career sooner? It's always a journey. Or do you want to talk about something you wish you'd learned earlier in your life or career?
We can probably incorporate them both.
Okay.
I think we can talk a bit about both because I think the journey that people often don't take when they're thinking about their career is going back to a little bit of what we talked about. Well, who am I and what is it that I want to do. Because we are socialized for get a good job, work at that job, don't get fired, try to get a better aspect of that job, whether it's better benefits, pay, experience, whatever. What certifications do I need? You know, what about this person? Why am I being held back? Why am I moving into this area? My area got, you know, sold off, or whatever the cases are. We, like, the person is lost in the experience. And I remember being told that, you know, you can love a corporation as much as you want, but it will never love you back.
Mm.
And I think that's a very powerful statement, because you have to determine, and I wished earlier in my career I understood that the journey I was on was totally mine. So although sometimes decisions might be made that weren't in my favor in that moment. So maybe I wanted a certain job and I didn't get it, or maybe I thought I deserved a promotion, it didn't come fast enough. Those are all parts of the journey, and they're not meant to slice your ego down into bite-sized snack pieces. You're still just as good. When you talked about performance reviews, I had some great managers and I had some not so great managers. And I had some great performance reviews, and I had performance reviews where, as the person was giving me the feedback, I would either say, yep, I totally see that and I'm going to work on that, or that is a totally unfair assessment because you don't even know the circumstances under which this happened, or this and this, it didn't enable me, or I wasn't set up for success, or what. Now, the difference now that I wish I had learned then is that doesn't change me.
Yeah.
Right? So feedback, I've been told feedback is a gift. Sure, but not all feedback is worthy of being received.
Yeah, I agree.
Right? A lot of feedback is.
It's subjective.
Right. But some feedback we have to be able to say to one another, you know what? Fair. That's your perspective. And if you feel that way, that's how you feel. But maybe I don't feel that way. Right.
Yeah.
And I think earlier on, I wish I had the confidence to say, let me digest that feedback, but let me not internalize it, and let it turn me into a pretzel inside thinking I'm not good enough.
And it usually has more to do with them, the person offering it, than it really does having to do with you.
Right. So, I mean, now I think that if I were to give someone advice about that I wish earlier on I was able to filter that through more analytically and not emotionally, take from it what I could learn, but not let it gnaw at me and make me feel less than. Take the stuff out of it that I could build on so I could be more than, or be that person that I was and that I am. So that to me is something that I would say is critical. And that leads to the next thing, which is no matter what stage of work you are, I now say to people, I'm interested in doing that work, but I don't want a career. And I had a search headhunter person say, you don't want a career. I said, no, I had a career. Now I just want to work.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting thing because the career to me is you get on a particular moving highway, like moving walkway, and you stay on it to build something. So the thing I would suggest to people 30, 40, 50, whatever age, 60, what is it you want to build? So are you on the right walkway? And is it moving too fast, too slow, or do you need to get off and get on another one? Because career is defined by many things for many people. So a lot of people say to me, you had a great career. And I think, why? What about it? That I had good titles, that I was compensated, well, that I worked for a wonderful company. What about that made it great? I know what made it great for me is how it changed me, what I learned, the relationships I built, the people I got to work with, and the really cool things I got to do.
Yeah.
Right. And the people that even to this day I'm in touch with all the time, and I see how well they're doing and I care about them. So the connections to me are what made it a great career, that I still have them, that I'm fortunate enough to still have them. So I think it's also asking yourself, what's a great career to me?
Yeah.
And when you go on LinkedIn, and you see this person just got promoted to chief commercial officer, chief marketing officer, chief, and we all applaud that and acknowledge that and all these things. If that person loves what they do and they're happy,
Right.
then that's fantastic. But it's, to me, it's 360 degrees of Justine that I'm interested in when I take that step back and look at myself objectively. So I loved all the stuff I got to do in my career, but I am a person outside of that and inside of that. And that stays.
Yes.
Right? Like when I left BMO Harris, I didn't leave as a customer, and I didn't leave as a friend or as a, former coworker, but I'm no longer officially, I'm alumna, right? I'm not a member of the tribe, the active tribe, although I am doing some consulting. So maybe that's not totally true, but yeah. I think that's also, how do you define your relationship to the place that compensates you?
Yeah, I like that.
Right. And I think for me, like, I'm still part of BMO Harris. So people are like, well, you left. I said, well, I left having a like full-time relationship, but I'm a customer.
Yeah.
I have tons of friends there. I'm doing some consulting.
Yeah.
And I left with the same passion for the place as I had when I was there. I still care about it.
Yeah. You just don't want to, I love that you're doing, the work is more important to you than the career. You already built it. You have it. You have all the knowledge. You have all the wisdom. You have the experience. And now you can just do the work when you want to do the work and not be on that walkway. Like I see it as like you're climbing the career, like you're where you want to be. You can do the work you want to do, and you don't have to be, it's not all those, as you're doing the work you want to do now, you don't have all those other, not milestones, but what, like you're, waiting for your performance review. Do you get a raise this year? Like it's all of those things where you're like measuring your success around, and it's like so freeing not to have to do that anymore. I feel like that's where I am in my career too. It's like, I love what I do right now, but I don't have to be measured by, I'm not measured by all those other things. It's just about the value I'm bringing and the people I want to connect with. I also love that you talked about connections. That's another chapter in my book, and how important they are to make all along your life and career, whether you are a stay-at-home mom or you want to be a CEO of a company. Connecting with the right people and having the right people in your life is such a big thing that's not talked about enough, I don't think. Connections, like it's all about just me and you connecting that at that conference that day, me connecting with James that day, me connecting with an executive at my company that day. It's like all of those things started a whole nother trajectory. And if I wasn't connecting and, you didn't meet the people you met at that conference, I'm sure, and the people that you work with that were already there, every time you're stepping on and you're connecting, whether it's someone new or someone, like you said, the people that you're at BMO Harris that you still are friends with, it's like, it's all about the connections. You can't get away from them. Thanks for listening. If you love this content, please rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts or whichever platform you found us on. You can get all my social media links in the description below. Help us keep the momentum going so that every person can live their lives happily, doing work they love.